So now we're going to honor another incredible journalist. Our next award is the Robert S. Greenberger Journalism Award. And I want to ask Scott Greenberger to tell us about his dad and the award named in his honor. Scott is executive editor of Stateline, a journalist like his father. And Scott leads a team of journalists who follow what journalists across the country are doing in covering policy trends at the state level across the country. So Scott, come on up.
My dad was a great journalist who had a profound effect on everyone he came into contact with, from his colleagues to his family. He had an amazing career traveling the world, reporting for the Wall Street Journal. He loved his work, and his experience made me want to be a journalist as well. When he retired, he wrote for Moment and helped Nadine create the Daniel Pearl Investigative Journalism Initiative to honor the memory of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. It is as important a project today as it was when we launched it 14 years ago, maybe even more so, and I am honored to serve on its advisory board. 5 years ago, Moment established an annual award in my dad's honor to recognize journalists who pursue the truth and who ensure that all sides of an issue are reported in a fair and civil manner. This award has been presented to Jake Tapper, Jane Mayer, Evan Osnos, Michelle Martin, Adam Sewer, Emily Bazelon, and last year to Ann Applebaum. This year, we are very pleased to be presenting the Robert S. Greenberger Award to CNN's Dana Bash.
Here to introduce Dana is her mother, Frances Schwartz, a journalist in her own right and one of Moment's incredible senior editors.
Well, Nina took away my surprise, but that's fine. For several years, I've served as one of Moment's senior editors, and when I found out that Dana was to receive this year's Robert S. Greenberger Journalism Award, and I was asked to introduce her, I was overjoyed. As we have just learned and heard wonderfully, Robert was a much heralded Wall Street Journal reporter who went on to write for Moment and helped establish our Daniel Pearl Investigative Journalism Initiative. He embodied intelligent reporting and journalistic integrity. Thank you. And as I was about to surprise you, a confession that I'm also Dana's mother. Watching her rise from a tape library assistant at CNN more than 30 years ago to her current positions, chief political correspondent, anchor of Inside Politics, and co-anchor of the Sunday show State of the Union, my husband Stu and I have been busting our buttons with pride. But through the years, I've wondered if we tell her often enough just how proud we are of her. So Moment has given me the opportunity to do so publicly, and I thank you. You might assume that because my husband Stu worked for more than 40 years as a producer at ABC News, and I also worked in broadcast journalism after college, Dana would identify her career path in broadcast news from the get-go. Nothing could be further from the truth. Seeing her father work long hours, sometimes 7 days a week, forced to delay or abandon long-planned vacations because a big story broke and he couldn't get away, Dana knew from an early age what she didn't want to do with her life, become a television journalist. In fact, she began college at George Washington University thinking that she might pursue a career in law. But that changed at the end of her freshman year when GW announced a new major that was accepting students by invitation only, called Political Communications. Students took courses in political science, statistics, and journalism. Now, one of her courses was taught by veteran journalist Steve Roberts, the husband of Dana's future colleague, Cokie Roberts. And Steve became a major influence on Dana and a cheerleader for her throughout her career. While in school, Dana was able to snag internships at ABC and NBC News, and then in her last semester at GW, she began to work at CNN. She was offered a permanent job there on her 22nd birthday, and they say the rest is history. I must add that her first week at CNN almost became her last. She'd been assigned to run the teleprompter, the device that allows anchors to look at the camera and read a script at the same time. Unfortunately, she screwed things up so badly, she thought she was done for. She was working the prompter for one of CNN's most important anchors. He got tripped up reading the prompter and demanded that whoever had messed up should be immediately fired. Well, Wolf Blitzer eventually calmed down. Wolf eventually calmed down and became Dana's mentor, advocate, and dear friend. Now, to better prepare for this introduction, I went to Wikipedia to check out her bio, and I was thrilled to read the first sentence. Dana Ruth Schwartz was born into a Jewish family. Growing up, Dana attended a Jewish camp, became bat mitzvah, and was confirmed. She and her brother knew that Friday night dinners were sacrosanct, as was attending Hebrew school and religious school. Dana joined a Jewish sorority, but not mine, at GW. Since her first husband was the son of a rabbi and the grandson of a cantor, Dana learned how to keep a kosher home, which she does to this day. Though Dana's journalistic focus and expertise does center on politics, her Jewish background has, of course, made her sensitive and alarmed, as many of us are, to the growing menace of anti-Semitism in our country, not to mention in other parts of the world, as we saw recently in Amsterdam. To that end, a couple of years ago, Dana produced and reported on anti-Semitism in America in a CNN documentary called The Longest Hatred. After October 7th, she updated the documentary and CNN rebroadcast it. Well, there's so much more I could say about Dana, but as they say in TV news, there's a time limit. So now I want to ask Sam Feist, CEO of C-SPAN, and an old friend and former colleague of Dana's, to present her award.
Good evening. You know, the greatest journalists in American history have stood at this National Press Club podium. In American journalism, this podium, where I am standing, this is hallowed ground. So it's fitting that we honor one of the greatest journalists I have ever known at this spot. Before leaving CNN for C-SPAN this summer, I was CNN's Washington bureau chief. I spent 33 years at CNN, and almost the entirety of my 33 years was spent working alongside Dana Bash. In 1993, I began a friendship and a partnership that has become one of the most important in my life and career. I was an associate producer on our Sunday show when we hired Dana as a production assistant from the job in the CNN library, as Francie just mentioned. Despite almost getting fired for running Wolf's prompter, that story is true, Dana actually became one of the best teleprompter operators anywhere, and that's not nothing. Dana is among the rarest of television news anchors. She rose through the ranks as a show producer, then as an assignment editor, then a Capitol Hill producer, a congressional correspondent, a White House correspondent, a political correspondent, but most poignant for me, she is now the anchor of the very program where she rolled that teleprompter as production assistant. When I say that never happens, it never happens. Throughout her career, she has been intrepid, fearless, speaking truth to power. As a reporter, as a debate moderator, as an interviewer, she goes toe-to-toe with the most powerful people in the world, and she never flinches. She knows our mission is to hold those in positions of authority accountable, and she does it better than anyone, which is why she is so respected from all quarters of American politics and American life. Dana also shows her humanity, such as last year during the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising, when she took our viewers on a penetrating tour of Auschwitz and the March of the Living. I will never forget the way she told the heart-wrenching story of her great-grandparents at Auschwitz. She tells the stories that must be told. I can think of no journalist that I would feel more honored to introduce as Moment's 2024 Robert Greenberger Award winner than my friend, my colleague, CNN's fearless and extraordinary chief political correspondent, Dana Bash.
Thank you to the Greenberger family, first of all, wherever you are. It was such an honor to meet you all tonight. What an incredible career Robert Greenberger had, and to be given an award in his name is such an honor, and one that I will cherish forever. Thank you to Sam, my colleague and friend of more than 30 years, as you heard. You taught me so much about being a joyful warrior for journalism and fairness and objectivity. I miss you every day at CNN, and I'm so proud of you, so happy for you as a big macher over at C-SPAN, CEO of C-SPAN to be specific, and Mom, Frances Weinman Schwartz. Even though I sometimes revert to my 16-year-old self when we're together, and that is not a good thing. I want you to know how lucky I feel every day to be your daughter. And what a special, memorable night this is. I'll never forget. The dedication that you bring to everything you do, from your work here at Moment, to the wise aging classes that you teach, to Torah study on Shabbat, to the countless Zooms that you're on doing I'm not sure what every single week. You bring your unique cocktail of whip-smart intellect, kindness, and compassion, and warmth. Not to mention the fact that you are a remarkably unjudgmental and supportive mother to me, to David, and grandmother to Jonah, Teo, and Stella. Thank you to my dad, who is also a role model, tireless cheerleader for all of us. My aunt, who is here from California, my brother from New York, my sweet son, Jonah. Thank you to my friends and colleagues who are here. I especially want to recognize my dear friends, the Blitzers, and also, Mom, sorry, I'm just gonna have to do a little fact check. Actually, she meant it as a joke, I believe, about Wolf, because anybody who's ever met Wolf for like 5 seconds knows in a million years he would not call for anybody to be fired or yell at anybody. It was a different anchor, which I think she knew what she was doing. She was saying that. I did run teleprompter for Wolf Blitzer. That is one of my claims to fame. That the first time he came from the White House beat to anchor a show, I was an associate producer, I think, or producer on that with Sam, and I was the first person to roll teleprompter for Wolf Blitzer. That is true. Wolf and Lynn, along with my brother David, went to Poland together in April of 2023. You heard a little bit about it from Sam. We were there as part of a delegation to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We went to Auschwitz, where Wolf's grandparents and my great-grandparents were murdered. That day is seared in my mind for so many reasons. Some of them, most of them are pretty obvious, but others became clearer 6 months later, October 7th, 2023. In April, I was standing in a gas chamber with Wolf, the very gas chamber where he was told that his grandparents were killed. I wanted to believe that it was ancient history, history that could never come close to being repeated, that hatred would never rear its head in these modern times. But when the deadliest day since the Holocaust happened on that Shabbat October morning, I knew instinctively that the horror expressed by much of the free world about that attack, would be accompanied by something dark, something not far below the surface, hate for Jews ingrained in culture and society for millennia. I knew that because of the work that you heard about that I'd done on anti-Semitism the year before. It was an hour-long special that I did in 2022. Anti-Semitism was already on the rise in the US, most viciously and outwardly from the right, from neo-Nazis, from white supremacists, unleashed by a leader who did not adequately condemn it. But it was brewing on the political left. The Palestinian cause was en vogue on college campuses well before 10/7/23, and being an anti-Israel government was more and more devolving into anti-Israel and anti-Semitism. Students who were proud liberals were being thrown out of progressive organizations that had nothing to do with Israel, but they were told it was because they were Zionists. As soon as October 8th, we saw that explode. Even before Israel retaliated, pro-Hamas, not pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas anti-Semitic language signs and symbols were popping up. I was lucky enough to work for a news organization, and still am, that let me cover all of this and also put together, as you heard, a second-hour special on anti-Semitism and continue to report on it on my daily show, Inside Politics, as well as during interviews on the Sunday show that I co-host, State of the Union. I also continue to cover Israel's retaliatory war in Gaza and conduct interviews with newsmakers on the topic, including a pretty spirited one with Prime Minister Netanyahu that centered on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Other journalists did as well, a lot of them. But for some reason, I got under the skin of some. So did Jake Tapper. Well, not for some reason. We know the reason. We're Jewish. I'll never forget the morning when the online hate that I tried to tune out showed up at my doorstep, literally. It was early July, not long after Jake and I had moderated the Trump-Biden debate. I heard a siren outside and ran to the door worried that it was a fire truck or a police officer and that something was happening with a neighbor. And I looked outside and I saw a group of people with a bullhorn holding signs saying pretty horrible things. They called me Zionist trash. They called me a war criminal. They called for an intifada against me. Unmistakable, raw anti-Semitism. I was glad that my son was at camp. They came back several times during the summer trying to intimidate me, but it really did only strengthen my resolve. As I've been thinking about tonight and what I would say, I've been wondering what made me so determined, and it's really simple. My grandparents survived the Nazis. It was a twist of fate, it was luck, it was fortitude. But they did it not only so they could survive, but our family and our people could survive. And here I was with the unbelievable good fortune of having a modest platform to continue to expose Jewish hate and not lose sight of the hostages, about 100 of whom are still in Gaza. And I was going to use it, not because of the cause. I'm not an activist. I'm a journalist, and it is newsworthy. And we cannot become numb and stop covering it. I owe that to my grandparents, all 4 of them, and my son. I mean, isn't the whole point to try to leave the world a better place? Well, the harassers, and I'm not going to call them protesters because that's not fair to actual protesters, they didn't stop. They followed me to an event that I was doing at Politics and Prose and let loose in my face with kind of a Mad Libs of anti-Semitic tropes. They formed a 14-car caravan last month and drove back and forth between Jake's house and my house. It was unpleasant, but it didn't really get to me. Not until this past Thursday. I was at a synagogue in Philadelphia in the suburbs giving a speech about the election. I was standing on the bima, the rabbi was standing next to me, and people were coming to say hi. Then a woman about 70 years old came up and started talking to me. She seemed nice at first, and then she started calling me a mouthpiece for genocide, among other things. I looked over and saw another woman about her age with a phone taking video. And you can see the video, which they promptly posted online, and you can see that my face goes from smile to horror pretty quickly. These people purchased tickets, pretended to be congregants, to approach me and get a viral moment. I let my guard down. I mean, I was a few feet away from the Ark, from the Torah. I was in a Hamish setting, a place that felt like home. I gotta be honest, I'm still processing it, and it'll probably take a minute for me to do that. But again, it strengthened my resolve and makes me even more grateful to work where I do with the people I work with, because they care about the subject and they care about me physically, and also, more importantly, about our ability to continue to report on these matters and more. So with that, I feel so incredibly honored to be here, because Moment Magazine, you do the same all the time. And it is such an important publication. And just like Robert Greenberger went around the world and looked for the truth, to report on the truth, Moment Magazine, you do too, and I hope as long as I can, I will continue to. And I also want to say congratulations to Eleanor Holmes Norton, to Robert Siegel. Leah, what an amazing, amazing song. To Deborah Katz, who is a force, and of course to Nadine for your awards. Thank you so much, appreciate it.